Jake rents an apartment. Marcus buys a starter home. They both think they made the smarter choice. They're both wrong, because neither of them accounted for what happens after the moving trucks leave. And when you actually track the numbers over 20 years, the outcome isn't what either of them expects. Let's keep this fair. Jake and Marcus both earn $60,000 a year. They both have $25,000 saved. They're the same age, same city, same starting point. The only difference is what they do with that money and that income going forward. Jake signs a lease on a 2-bedroom apartment. $1,800 a month, first and last month's rent due up front, plus a $500 deposit. That's $4,100 out the door on day one. He keeps the rest of his $25,000 in a savings account, just in case. Marcus uses his $25,000 as a down payment on a $280,000 starter home. He takes out a 30-year mortgage at 6.5% interest. His monthly payment, including property tax and insurance, comes out to about $2,150. That's $350 more than Jake pays every single month. On day one, Jake has cash in the bank and total flexibility. He can move cities in 30 days if he wants to. Marcus has a mortgage, a yard he has to maintain, and a payment that's noticeably heavier than his friends. Jake feels like he's winning already. For the first few years, Jake is living light. No repairs to worry about. Something breaks, he calls the landlord. He puts $200 a month into an index fund with the money he's saving compared to Marcus. The rest he just spends, because renting feels temporary, so saving feels optional. Marcus, meanwhile, is dealing with homeowner reality. Year 1, the water heater dies, $1,100. Year 2, he replaces a section of fence after a storm, $900. His property taxes go up slightly. His insurance premium creeps higher. Every month, more of his payment is going toward interest than principal, because that's how mortgages work early on. Let's run the actual numbers through year 3. Jake has paid $64,800 in rent, plus his $4,100 up front. That's $68,900 total, and he owns nothing. His savings, growing modestly in that index fund, sit around $8,500. Marcus has paid $77,400 in mortgage payments, plus $2,000 in repairs. That's $79,400 total. But his home has appreciated, worth roughly $300,000 now. His remaining mortgage balance is about $246,000. His equity is close to $54,000. On paper, Marcus looks like he's ahead by a wide margin. But equity isn't the same as cash in your pocket, and that gap matters more than people think. Here's what nobody talks about when they show you a mortgage payment next to a rent check. The mortgage payment isn't the full cost of owning. Maintenance runs about 1% of a home's value every year. On a $280,000 house, that's $2,800 annually that most first-time buyers don't budget for. Closing costs when Marcus bought the home ran him roughly $6,000 on top of his down payment. Property taxes rise over time, sometimes faster than income does. And if Marcus ever needs to sell, he's paying 6% in realtor commissions. On a $300,000 home, that's $18,000 gone before he sees a dollar of his equity. Jake's rent looks simple by comparison, but it has its own hidden math. His landlord can raise the rent every year at renewal, and in most cities, there's no cap on how much. A 5% annual increase, which is conservative in a lot of markets, means Jake's $1,800 rent becomes $2,297 by year 5. He has no control over that number. He's not building anything with it. Every dollar disappears the moment it leaves his account. By year 5, Jake's rent has crept up to about $2,180 a month. His total spent on housing over 5 years is roughly $121,000. His investment account, fed by whatever he managed to save, most years less than he planned, sits around $14,000. He has flexibility, but not much to show for it. Financially, Marcus is 5 years in. His home is worth approximately $325,000. His mortgage balance has dropped to around $234,000. His equity is close to $91,000. He's replaced a water heater, patched a fence, and dealt with one plumbing issue that cost $600. His total out-of-pocket beyond the mortgage itself is around $4,500 over 5 years. Not nothing, but manageable. Jake's friends ask him why he doesn't just buy something. He tells them he's not ready, or the market's too expensive, or he likes the freedom. All of that might be true. But underneath it, the real reason is that renting never forces the decision the way a mortgage does. Nobody automatically builds equity for you. You have to choose to every single month, and most people don't. By year 10, the picture sharpens. Marcus's home has appreciated to roughly $410,000, assuming average regional growth of about 4% a year. His mortgage balance is down to around $198,000. His equity has grown to approximately $212,000. That's real, spendable, borrowable wealth, built almost entirely by making a payment he was going to make anyway, on a place he had to live regardless. Jake, over that same 10 years, has paid rent that's climbed steadily with each lease renewal, totaling somewhere around $255,000 in cumulative rent payments. His investment account, assuming he kept contributing consistently, which is generous given how inconsistent most renters actually are, sits around $38,000. Even in the best case, where Jake invested every dollar he saved compared to Marcus, his net worth from housing-adjacent decisions is nowhere close to Marcus's equity. This is where the story usually ends in most videos, and it's also where most videos lie to you by leaving out the risk. Because homeownership isn't free of danger, and pretending otherwise does a disservice to anyone about to sign a 30-year loan. If I only showed you the upside of buying, I'd be doing exactly what every real estate account on this platform does. Here's the other side. Marcus is locked into that home. If the local job market collapses, or he needs to relocate for a new opportunity, selling costs him tens of thousands in fees. And if the timing is bad, he could sell at a loss. Homeowners in 2008 learned that appreciation isn't guaranteed. Some markets dropped 30% or more, and people who bought at the peak spent a decade underwater, owing more than their homes were worth. That risk is real, and anyone who tells you real estate always goes up is lying to you or hasn't been paying attention. There's also opportunity cost. That $25,000 down payment, if Marcus had put it into an index fund instead and rented like Jake, could have grown substantially on its own. And every dollar of extra mortgage payment compared to rent, if invested instead, compounds too. In a slow appreciation market, or a city where rent is genuinely cheap relative to home prices, the math can favor renting and investing the difference, especially if the renter actually has the discipline to invest it, which, statistically, most people don't. And illiquidity is a real cost. Marcus's $212,000 in equity isn't sitting in a bank account. He can't spend it without selling the house or taking out a loan against it, and both of those come with costs and risk. Jake's $38,000, whatever it ends up being, is liquid. He can move it, spend it, or redirect it anytime he wants. By year 20, the gap becomes difficult to ignore. Marcus's home, assuming steady regional appreciation, is worth somewhere between $560,000 and $610,000. His mortgage is either paid off or close to it. His equity sits between $500,000 and $560,000. He's paid for maintenance and repairs the whole way, probably $50,000 to $70,000 cumulatively across 2 decades, including one major renovation. But he owns his home outright, and his monthly housing cost from here forward is just taxes, insurance, and upkeep, a fraction of what renters are paying by then. Jake's cumulative rent over 20 years, factoring in steady annual increases, lands somewhere around $620,000 to $650,000. His investment account, even in an optimistic scenario where he consistently invested the difference every single month for 2 decades, sits around $180,000 to $220,000. That's real money, and it's not a small outcome. But it's roughly a third of what Marcus has in home equity alone, and Marcus also has a paid-off place to live, which Jake still doesn't. When you compare the two side by side, Marcus ends up ahead in almost every realistic scenario. But the size of that gap depends entirely on discipline, market conditions, and how long each of them stays in place. If Jake had actually invested every dollar he saved with total consistency for 20 years, the gap narrows significantly. If Marcus had bought in a stagnant market or needed to sell early and eat the transaction costs, his advantage shrinks too. Jake and Marcus both walked into their 20s thinking they were making the responsible choice. Jake thought flexibility and liquidity would keep him ahead. Marcus thought a mortgage payment was basically forced savings. Neither of them sat down and mapped out what either path actually costs, in dollars, in risk, and in what happens if life doesn't go according to plan. The real trap isn't renting, and it isn't buying. The real trap is picking one because a headline told you homeownership is the only path to wealth, or because someone online convinced you renting is throwing money away, without ever running the numbers for your own city, your own income, and your own timeline. And if you're wondering what happens when you buy a home and still invest aggressively at the same time, that's a completely different conversation, and the math might surprise you. But for now, the next time someone tells you renting is throwing money away or buying is always the smart move, ask them one question. Did you actually run the numbers? Or did you just repeat what everyone else says?